Good morning, class. Welcome to your snow day, and here is our uh, lecture on Piaget's theory of cognitive development. I'm very concerned we're going to get behind, so I'm going to do a quick screencast over the information so that you have it and can listen to it before class on Wednesday. As far as your scenario test is concerned, just bring it in class on Wednesday and I'll give you a little bit of time to discuss it before you turn it in. So we're talking about cognitive development. We're moving out of physical, going into cognitive, which was one of our three domains in child development. And we're going to look very carefully at several people who have contributed significantly to our current educational philosophies about how our brains work and how we retain information. Being teachers, the ability to help children retrieve information once it's been learned is of critical importance to us. So knowing how these theories have come together and the influence they have on our current practice is very important in this class. So we're going to start with Jean Piaget, and Piaget was a biologist. And he is most known for his method called the clinical method. And in that particular method, there we go. In that method, it's where an adult asks a child a series of questions, but except for the initial question, all of the other questions are based on the response of the child. And so they begin to tailor the questions to what the child is actually doing. And Piaget truly believed that children were very active learners. We'll talk about that in a little more depth in the next couple slides. And by asking them what they were thinking about, they were able to define a theory that has lasted through most educational practice that we have now. He has several key ideas throughout his theory. The first one is that children are active and they are motivated learners. They are not trying to do things just to annoy us. They are really trying to figure some things out from what the stimulus that they have in their particular environment. And so they organize what they learn from their experiences. And so they build one experience on the other, and they do this in what they call schemes. You might have heard of a word called schema before, and that stands for our background knowledge. But what Piaget was saying is that whatever we experience, whatever we're learning, whatever is brought to us from the environment, we are going to find a way to organize it. And he called that organization schemes. They can be behavioral. I act this way. I got in trouble for my actions. I don't want to act this way again. It can also be mental. I'm watching my mom do this task of tying shoes. So if I watch her, I can then learn how to tie my shoes through the observation that I'm having. And it can also move into abstract ideals of thought. For instance, the thought of peace, the concept of peace. As a child gets older, that's going to mean different things to them. And it will start very much isolated in their own world. What does peace in my environment look like? And grow out to what does peace in the world look like? Particularly in today's situation, peace is very fragile in the country of the Ukraine. And as students get older and into a higher stage of Piaget, they're going to have a different way of how they look and discuss that. He described that children create their knowledge about their world, and he calls these operations. What are the actual abilities of a particular child at a certain age? And so you're going to look at Piaget as a stage theory because it very much organizes based on the age of the child. So looking a little bit more into schemes and how children organize things, what they're looking at is through either assimilation or accommodation, they're going to learn how to adapt within their environment. And so when you look at accommodation, there's two parts of it. Accommodation can be, I just saw something brand new I've never seen before, so I'm observing this or I'm experiencing this, and that is adding to my schemes. I'm making a new one. Or I can have a scheme that I already know about, like I'm sitting in a high chair. I'm a young child, I'm sitting in a high chair at home, and when I'm at home, I can move the Cheerios around on my tray, and eventually I will drop one of my Cheerios off the tray and look down to see what happened to the Cheerio, and oh, there's a puppy dog, and the puppy dog wants to eat my Cheerios. So now I've learned that if I slide them off, I can feed the puppy dog. And if the puppy dog wants more, maybe the puppy dog will put their paws up on me and lick my toes. That's modifying an existing scheme. That's accommodating a new scenario based on a scenario they already understand. The other one is assimilation, and this entails responding either physically or mentally to an object in a way that's consistent with an existing scheme. So, for example, infants are usually fed through the mouth. The infants explore things through their mouths, so therefore everything that I touch, I need to first put it into my mouth. So it doesn't matter, I haven't recognized it as food or non-food, but it's going in my mouth because that's what I do with new things. Another assimilation is a 7-year-old is playing in the backyard and they see something long and narrow and slithering through the grass, and they look at that and go, that's a snake. They might have never seen a snake before in real life, but because they are responding to their environment, they are assimilating that information and putting it into a scheme that they already have some understanding about. But they do have to adjust their schemes because this is how we learn, and nobody stays in the same environment all the time. So then another key idea for him is that interaction with the environment is essential, and it has to be interaction with outdoors, it has to be interaction with people. And if children do not have those types of interactions, then they don't have the process of adapting and adjusting their schemes that they're creating. And the more they are exposed to certain environments, the more schemes they're going to have and bring with them, which we've learned is very important for children, particularly in understanding language, in building their vocabulary, and being able to see that the world does change when they walk outside their own door. He also has this concept of equilibrium, and it leads to increasingly complex thought. Now, think of a scale, and when a scale is balanced, both sides have equal weight on them. And so if we think of mental images and ideas in terms of a scale, and we want them to be balanced, we want to feel very confident in our acquisition of that knowledge, and we want to be able to access that knowledge when we are given a problem that requires it. But sometimes we get information, we're not exactly sure where to put it. We're not exactly sure what we're supposed to be doing with it, or we see something that we know very, very well, and it has a different twist on it, and our brains kind of go, what? What just happened there? I got to go back and relook at that. That is what is called disequilibrium, and it's wrestling with ideas or logic or problems or words or confusion that help us reach back to a state of equilibrium. We like to be in equilibrium. Equilibrium makes us feel like we're in control, and children like to feel in control too. But as teachers, we often introduce new things to them that causes them to reach a state of disequilibrium. Now, being in disequilibrium is not necessarily a bad thing when there's resolution that comes with it. And sometimes children need to struggle with something in order to really grasp the concept that they have. Think of math. There are lots of times in math when you add one new change and or students tend to go, I didn't get that. Can you go back to that part? I didn't get that part. Think of the first time you got introduced to decimals or dividing with fractions. All of those can produce major disequilibrium within students. And as teachers, we need to know when to allow it and when do we need to go back to a resolution so that they do feel confident in what they're learning. And Piaget took these concepts and he organized them into stages of development based on the age of a child. These are based on observations and interviews and using the clinical method with children at different ages. So his first stages are sensory motor, and that's basically at birth. And it's where they begin to develop schemes based on behaviors and perceptions. I cry, mom comes and picks me up. I know that I will get fed once she comes and picks me up. So if I cry, I will get food. That is a perception. As they get a little older, they begin to, through this stage, and by older I mean 9 months, 10 months, 11 months, 16 months, they begin to see symbolic thought emerge at the end of this stage, which is why an 18-month-old child can drive down the street in the car seat and go 5-5 for French fry when they see golden arches. They begin to associate a symbol with a meaning that it has been within their own set of schemes. Also, in sensory motor stage, it's called sensory motor because everything is developed by the senses at this stage. What I hear, what I touch, what I taste, what I see, all of these are based within the senses, and that is how they explore their world. The sensory motor stage goes from birth to age 2, and you begin to see what they call goal-directed behavior. For instance, an infant that is starting to roll over. So we're talking maybe 4 or 5 months at this point. If you see the baby twisting but not quite turning over, and you put their favorite toy just out of their grasp, they might just pull just enough so that their body rolls over and they can grab that particular toy. So we see goal-directed behavior in their crawling, in their walking, and a lot of times that behavior is what pushes them to their next developmental milestone in the physical development areas. The other thing that emerges in sensory motor stage is something called object permanence. And babies at first, they don't understand that objects can go away and come back. They don't have the concept of mom will return. All they know is mom is in front of me right now, and then mom goes away and mom's not there anymore. But they develop this sense of object permanence, where if mom goes away, I understand that mom is coming back. And they do this through an experiment called the A not B experiment, which we'll talk about in class. The next stage is the preoperational stage, and you begin to see in the preoperational stage symbolic thought and language development. This is when beginning of one-syllable words mean things. They might make a motion with their hands where their fingers are grasping towards you. This is when they learn hi, bye. They learn that bye-bye means I'm going away or someone else is going away. Basic language are starting to come through at the beginning of this at age 2. Perhaps they even have two-word sentences. I get, I do it. Is a very popular one because by the time they're 3, they like their independence. But at this point in time, they really don't have a lot of reason and logic in this particular stage. And you can see this at the bookstore. Barnes & Noble has a Thomas table, and you see this every time you go sit in the children's section. There will be a young child, who is having a really good time playing with those wooden trains, and it will be time to go, and they throw an absolute fit. Even if mom is only going over to another section of the bookstore to go get dad and come back, the child doesn't realize the reason and the logic of that I can come back to this table. All they know is that I am being taken away from something I'm really enjoying doing, which is playing with Thomas the Train. So you can see where 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds can really throw a tantrum because they haven't quite gotten a logical progression of understanding what's happening. Even though they have some object permanence, if they're really engaged in something, they really don't want to turn around and leave it. Other things on this stage is they do have egocentrism. Everything is about them at this stage. It is all about me. My favorites, my colors, what I like, what I don't like. All life is according to how I see it. So it really truly comes from their own perspective. The pre-operational stage lasts until about age 6 or 7, so those of you who are early childhood teachers, you're going to be working significantly within this stage, and you're going to want to look at table 6.1 in your book. It's on page 199, because that details some of the things and some of the milestones that you see in the cognitive development of this stage. So I'm going to stop the first part of this video now because I can only record for 15 minutes and I'm just about out of time here.